of faith and love, the journey's now. Keep your hands to the plow. Oh, beloved, telling the stories of people of faith and love, the journey's now. Keep your hands to the plow. Oh, beloved, telling the stories of people of faith and love, the journey's now. Keep your hands to the plow. Oh, beloved, telling the stories of people of faith and love, the journey's now. Keep your hands to the plow. Oh, beloved, pass your story. Pass your story on. Pass your story. Pass your story on. Pass your story. Pass your story on. Pass the story on.
Mississippi, on Sunday morning, there's about 17 kids. On Sunday morning, what we do, kill a bunch of chickens, put them in hot water, pick the feathers off them, be a lot of little feathers, we hold the chicken up, burn the half piece. You know that you all my video. We hold the chicken up like this and burn all the feathers off of them. And they took me all over the world by burning the feathers off the chicken. And after all of that is now I'm the only one left out of 17 kids. I used to help my mama cook and stuff like that. So we would kill chickens on Sunday morning, pick the feathers off of them, and cook them. That's what we did. And from that on, I left Mississippi and came to Memphis in 1951, the 3rd of December. And I've been busy ever since doing the juvenile court, helping kids in the community. We got grants where we helped all the kids. I've always been busy since I've been in Memphis, doing something to help people. A legacy, I want to leave a legacy for the people that I know. So that you can do something if you want to. You can do anything you want to do if you try. Whitehaven myself started the food bank out of the barbershop at 887 Thomas Street. The same food bank you're talking about now, I started it out of the barbershop. We got so big in the barbershop, we had stuff everywhere. So we got so big, Bishop Porter on Chelsea and Dunlap let me use the back part of his church. We got too big there. When it got too big for Greater Community Temple, we had to move to higher part of school. And we were getting truckloads of stuff like they're doing now. So when I know anything, they'll switch it around. And the same program we got now, we started out at the barbershop. Food bank, pass the story on.
Well, Whitehaven was, the name itself speaks to what it was. It was formed as a haven for white people, because that was during the time of segregation was really big during that time. So it was like a rural community that was, that was their haven. So they had built it up, and it's famous for Graceland, and that's where Elvis lived, and he had all his cars and everything in Whitehaven. So in the 70s is when black people started to move to Whitehaven. It was, you moved from like South Memphis and Orange Mound, and if, when you got enough money, you moved out to Whitehaven. My husband is actually one of the ones that migrated to Whitehaven. I moved to Whitehaven when, in the 80s, when I got married, and it was just a very upscale community. There was apartment complexes. We lived in an apartment complex where the Elvis Pavilion, I think that's what it's called, their sound stage is now. And we lived in that apartment complex, and it was home. It was a really nice place to live. It was a nice place to raise your children. The schools were really nice. There was the shopping center that's there now. It's vacant and all torn down, but at that time it was a really busy shopping center. It was where one of the first Dillard's was actually in Whitehaven, and the Southland Mall was the place to go shopping in Christmas time. There was recreational things for kids to do. There was this place called Big Daddy's where you could go and shoot pool. It was like a rec hall, and there was a few clubs back there. There was this club called Maximilian where people went to have fun, and that's where the AutoZone is sitting there now. And there used to be a club, I forgot the name of that one. It was, but it was really an upscale community where black people could come and have fun, because we had started migrating, and as black people started moving in, then white people started moving out. The older people that were there at first, that was there, they should connect with the younger people that's coming in. And if that gap, that age gap, is shortened, then it can come back and be the community that it once was. Because a lot of times the older people think the young people don't know anything, and the young people think the older people don't know anything, so they end up doing two different things. And it's like trying to drive a car with, two wheels on one side and two wheels on the top of it. You can't do that. So if the communication gap is closed, I think it could start thriving. The older people got to understand, now every time, back in the day, if we had a club that we danced, it was good, but now there's cigar bars that come up. There's coffee bars that come up. We have to understand that there's a changing in the times. So once we get that and get the communication together, I think Whitehaven could, outdo Germantown.
Pass your story on, pass your story, pass your story on, pass your story, pass your story on, pass the story on.
President Eisenhower, White, came to Douglas because they raised so much food during the Depression, and they had so much, meats as well. They shared with other communities, and I'm quite sure Hyde Park was one of those communities, because Hollywood was predominantly white, and they were pretty racist. If you walked there, you had to be careful. You might have a dog chase you or something similar to that, because it happened to me when I was a child. So it's just that I'm impressed with black neighborhoods, because they said in Douglas there was one street, they were all entrepreneurs, You were either brick mason, or you knew carpentry or plumbing. So they worked for themselves, and they were self-sufficient. So that's what we have to bring back, self-sufficiency, take care of our own, be responsible for ourselves. And Hyde Park was pretty much the same way. But Douglas tended to be a stronger neighborhood, a more cohesive neighborhood. Of course, they call it the country, or maybe that's why. A lot of people didn't come across the railroad tracks, so they were efficient. But I think we caught on in Hyde Park. But we made our own, we built our own houses from the city dump. Now how much more recyclable can you be? That's such a word, recyclable. Come on, you go to the dump to build your house. And my mother told me that story, and it stuck with me. It stuck with me. That's being very resourceful. So we need to be resourceful again.
To have a community meeting, I made up a flyer and put it in everybody's door. And this was 350 houses. And so it took me half a day to do it at that time. I said, well, I might get 10 people. And so I had me some handouts for about 10, maybe 12 people. And then I had 35 people to show up. Oh, by the way, I had gotten a church, Galatians Baptist, to let us meet there instead of going up to the community center. And they said, okay. So we met at the church. And we had 35 people, and I didn't have enough handouts. So somebody there was a member of the church, so they made me some copies so I can pass them out. Well, we had little activities that were more in line with getting to know each other. Little icebreakers, and who do you know that can do this? Who do you know that has this kind of tree in the yard? And, who has this kind of color on the house? Trying to get people to notice who's on the street. Also, we had tables set up with the names of the streets, so that if you are from this street, you sit at this table. You're from this street, you sit at that table. And that caused people to have to get to know who's on that street. And then we created something called a street caucus, which is now that you're sitting at the table, decide on somebody who will be your street representative, like a head or like the leader. But you pick the person who you want to represent your street, if they have to represent. But we had some big decisions to make. First question that had to be asked was, do you want to organize? And everybody said yes. I said, okay, you want to organize? I said, and then we had to ask where are our boundaries. Now, I knew where I thought they should be, but I had to get them to say where they were. So they decided the boundaries would be where I had recommended. And then we said, now who are we? What is our name? And they said, well, I live in Palmer Hill. And other folks said, well, I live in Wilshire Park. These are subdivisions. And other people, I live in Overton Park View. We said, well, now what is the name though? And so someone said, splice these names together and came up with Palmershire Park. And so that's how we got to be who we are. Okay, well, pass the story on.
Telling the stories of people of faith and love. The journey's now. Keep your hands